Where is France mentioned in Tanakh? Where is Spain mentioned in Tanakh? The answer is in this Haftorah. The pasuk says, "The galus hachel hazeh," is in pasuk Yutes, verse 19. The Haftorah Uvadia, pasuk Yutes. The galus hachel hazeh livnei Yisrael asher Kananim ad Sorfas v'galus Yerushalayim asher Bisfarad Yorshu es arei Hanegev. That this is a prophecy about the ultimate redemption, the ultimate Mashiach, the Shivas Tzion, in which the Jewish people who have been exiled will come back to Eretz Yisrael, and they will even settle the Arei HaNegev. This doesn't mean our Negev, this means further south. They will settle the territory of Edom. The Galus that goes all the way to Tzarfat. Now what is Tzarfat? So here we have a big machlokas of Mefarshim. The Malbim, somewhat modestly, simply says Tzarfat refers to a city in the north of Eretz Yisrael. Not Tzarfat, Isha Sephartit, you actually have that. But the Abarbanel said Tzarfat is France, as in modern Hebrew we call it France, and Sepharad is Spain, and it mentions already that already from the time of the first Korban, the Abarbanel says, people make a mistake when they think that all the Jews were exiled to Babylonia, and then they went to Persia. It's a big mistake. At the time of the Galut Bavel, Jews were scattered all over the place, and they had already come to Europe, and they had come to Spain, and they had come to France. In fact, we even have later traditions, again, we're not sure if they're historically accurate, in which when Ezra came from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, and the second temple was going to be rededicated, so messages were sent to Jewish communities in Germany, inviting them to come back. One response was given. We have our little Yerushalayim here. You have your big Yerushalayim there. And we will send donations, but we're very, very happy we've settled here. Which means, actually, that there were Ashkenazi communities in France, in Germany, although Germany is not mentioned here, Spain. But in terms of when Jews got to the Iberian Peninsula and when they got to France, is as early as, and maybe even earlier, but at least as early as the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash. Quite amazing. The first Beis HaMikdash, the historical date that's given for the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash is typically 586 BCE. Now some say under Jewish chronology you have to make it a little around 130 years later, because otherwise it doesn't go. But even if you make it 130 years later, so you're talking about 450 BC, 4 centuries before the Common Era. And that is how old these communities were. Now some say you actually had them from Shlomo HaMelech already. Okay, but that we don't necessarily have any proof for. In fact, this is interesting. When the Babylonian Talmud was completed, the Gemara was completed around the year in the 600, 7th century, 600. And the Babylonian Talmud was sent to these communities in Europe. Some of them didn't want to accept it because they said, we have minhagim that are older than the Gemara. You know, the Gemara is innovating. Our minhagim are before. Hundreds of years we've been here. 1,000 years. 586 BC to 600 coming in is 1,000 years. So it's quite amazing. So this pasuk is one of the references that the Abarbanel and other Mefarshim use for the presence of Jewish community. Of course, the Abarbanel was in Spain, and he uses this to show that the Jewish presence in Spain is extremely ancient. Dating from the Churban of the Beis HaMikdash. And then the Haftorah ends with a pasuk that we actually say every day at the end of Oz Yashir, but it's not part of Oz Yashir. It's after it says, V'olu Moshiim Bahar Tzion. Eventually there will be saviors that will reclaim Mount Zion, which Mount Zion here really means the Temple Mount. We have another mount called Mount Zion. Bahar Tzion is the Makom HaMikdash. Lishbot es Haresav. And the mountains of Esav, which means the great ones of Esav, the leaders of Esav, shall be judged and held accountable for Haisa Lashem Hamlucha, and then God's kingdom will be established. Let me just end with a very interesting Ha'ora of the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says that there's a difference between Melech and Moshe. Both of them mean a ruler, a king. But a Melech is a king whose subjects have voluntarily accepted him out of awe and reverence and love. A Moshel is a ruler who imposes his rule on you without your acceptance, like a dictator. So that's why the pasuk says, Ki Lashem Hamlucha uMoshel Bagoyim. vis-a-vis the nations of the world who don't accept Hashem, He is the Moshe. But for Am Yisrael, Hashem is the Melech. We accept Him. So, I think the Haftarah is making the point that when the ultimate Mashiach comes and Hashem's glory is revealed in the world, V'haisal Hashem Hamlucha, the whole world will accept Hashem as Melech. It will no longer be a Moshe. One final thing. Earlier in the Haftarah, it mentions that, there's a reference to the various wars that will occur before Mashiach comes, but it says, V'har Tzion tiyeh pleita. There will be a remnant of Jews that will survive in Har Tzion, which is really Yerushalayim, for Haya Kodesh, and that remnant will be holy. V'yorshu Beis Yaakov Eis Moroshehem, and the house of Yaakov shall inherit those who try to inherit them.